World of Words, Season 1, Words That Find Us Again, Episode 6, The Magnifying Glass. What becomes visible when we look closer? Welcome to a new episode of World of Words on my channel, Die Kulturerbe-Archivarin. Today we turn to an object that has once lived in many drawers, in desk compartments and travel bags, in the quiet corner of a home. A small tool you picked up when you wanted to see something more clearly. A tool that changed the way the world appeared. Not by altering the world, but by altering your view. Today's word is magnifying glass, or, in a gentler tone, the little glass that enlarges. An object that has almost disappeared, and yet a symbol that still accompanies us. The act of looking closely, of discovering, of understanding. Perhaps that is why this old tool still touches something in us. A quiet longing to slow down, to pay attention, to see what we usually pass by. Let us step into the soft, attentive world of this small, round, shining word. Chapter 2. The word. Origin, sound, meaning. Magnifying glass. A simple phrase. It begins with magnifying. A word that stretches, a word that opens, a word that gently expands whatever it touches. Then, glass. A soft ending, a clear surface. A material that lets light pass through and changes nothing except the way we see. The phrase comes from the Latin magnus, great, large, important, and from the old craft of shaping clear lenses that could bring the small into focus. A magnifying glass is a tool of attention, a tool of curiosity, a tool of understanding. Very early on, it became more than an object. It became an image. For clarity, for careful looking, for the quiet act of noticing what is already there. A magnifying glass does not create new details. It reveals the ones we missed. Perhaps this is the gentle message of this word. The word is full of things we only see when we choose to look closer. Chapter 3. Proverbs and expressions. When we look into English, we notice that the magnifying glass rarely appears in traditional proverbs. And yet, its spirit is everywhere, in the way we speak about attention, about clarity, about the act of looking closely. Where the word is missing, the image begins to speak. To look at something under a magnifying glass. A modern expression, simple, clear, direct. It means to examine something carefully, to slow down, to notice details that are easy to miss. It is not only about objects. It can be about a situation, a feeling, a memory, a decision. To look under a magnifying glass is to give something the attention it deserves. To magnify a problem, a gentle warning in English. It means to make something bigger than it is. To let worry enlarge a small detail. To let fear change the scale of a situation. This expression reminds us that the magnifying glass is neutral. It can reveal truth, but it can also distort if we hold it too close or at the wrong angle. It is a reminder of balance, of perspective, of choosing how near we want to be. To bring something into focus. A phrase that comes from lenses, but now belongs to everyday life. It means to understand something clearly, to see what matters, to let the important part come forward while the noise fades into the background. A magnifying glass does exactly this. It brings a small truth into gentle clarity. To see the fine print. Originally a warning about contracts, but also a metaphor for life. The fine print is the detail that changes everything. The small line, the quiet condition, the part we often overlook. A magnifying glass is the perfect symbol for this kind of careful reading. The reading that protects us, guides us, and helps us to understand what lies beneath the surface. Chapter 4. The inner space. What becomes visible? A magnifying glass is a small object, and yet it changes the world, not by altering what exists, but by revealing what was already there. It shows us that size is relative, that meaning grows when we look closely, that small things become large when we give them space. Inside us there are similar movements, inner rooms that open when we pay attention, rooms that wait quietly until we are ready to see. 4.1. The magnifying glass as an inner sanctuary. Within each of us are places we do not show to everyone. Soft places, quiet places, rooms that hold memories, feelings, stories, hopes, vulnerabilities. These inner rooms are not walls, they are sanctuaries. Spaces where something may exist without pressure, without judgment, without hurry. A sanctuary that says, here something may be exactly as it is. 4.2. What we notice and why. We notice things because they matter, not to cling but to understand. Sometimes it is a small detail, a tone in someone's voice, a moment that stays, a thought that returns, a feeling that asks to be seen. These things are tiny, yet they carry entire stories. A magnifying glass teaches us small does not mean unimportant. Small often means look again. 4.3. The magnifying glass as an image of identity. Identity is not loud. It is quiet, collected, gathered over time. Inside us are rooms no one else can see, yet they shape who we are. Perhaps identity is less a grand structure and more a small, steady box of details we have kept. Moments that formed us, truths that stayed, memories that guide us. A magnifying glass reminds us that identity is built from the small things we choose to notice. 4.4. Seeing without overwhelm. A magnifying glass does not force anything. It does not shout. It does not demand. It simply reveals. Looking closely does not mean we must hold everything at once. It means we may choose what we bring into focus. We can look at something without being swallowed by it. We can notice without being overwhelmed. To look closely is not to cling. It is to understand. The magnifying glass as a companion. Perhaps there is something in your life you have not looked at in a long time. Something small, something quiet, something waiting. A magnifying glass is a gentle companion. It does not push, it does not hurry. It simply says, "Look, the world is full of details, and some of them belong to you." Maybe this is the deepest message of this chapter. What becomes visible was often there all along. It only needed your attention. Chapter 5. The Poetic Scene. The magnifying glass in your hands. Imagine you are sitting at a wooden table. Old wood. A surface with small marks. Traces of hands that rested there before you. Perhaps a soft line of morning light lies across it, opening the room gently. Before you lies a magnifying glass. It is not large. It does not demand attention. It waits. The frame is metal, slightly worn, a quiet circle that has seen many years. The glass is clear, catching the light in a thin, bright curve. You place your hand on it, slowly, deliberately. The metal is cool but not cold. The temperature of something that has rested for a long time, patient, ready to be held. You lift it. It has a small weight, not heavy, not light, a weight that feels honest. You bring it closer to the table. The wood beneath it shifts, changes, opens. Lines become deeper, patterns become clearer, tiny details appear, details you have never noticed before. You move the glass over a page, perhaps a letter, perhaps a book, perhaps a note you once wrote to yourself. The letters rise gently as if stepping forward to be seen. You move the glass over a stone, a simple stone, one you might have ignored. But under the magnifying glass it becomes a landscape. Small valleys, thin cracks, tiny grains of color, a world inside a world. The magnifying glass shows you that the world is larger when you look closely, that the small becomes great when you give it attention, that the hidden becomes visible when you are ready to see. You lower the glass. The room is quiet. The light is soft. And something in you feels a little more open, a little more awake, a little more present. Perhaps you sense that the magnifying glass is not only an object. It is a way of seeing, a way of being. A gentle reminder that clarity begins with attention. Chapter 6: Cultural Miniatures. Across centuries and cultures, the magnifying glass appears in small, vivid scenes. Moments where people bend closer to the world to understand it, to study it, to marvel at it. These miniatures show how humans have always carried a quiet desire to see more clearly, to notice what is small, to understand what lies beneath the surface. 6.1 The Naturalist's Glass, a window into hidden worlds. Imagine a botanist in the 18th century, kneeling in a meadow, lifting a leaf, turning a stone. Around their neck hangs a small magnifying glass, its lens catching the morning light. Under the glass, the world becomes a stage. Tiny hairs on a stem, fine veins in a petal, the delicate armor of an insect. Many early scientific drawings were created with such a glass in hand, a tool that revealed the quiet architecture of nature. 4.2 The Watchmaker's Lens, a universe of precision. In old workshops, watchmakers sat at wooden tables, a magnifying lens pressed gently between brow and cheek. Through the glass they saw gears smaller than a grain of rice, springs thin as a whisper, movements that deepened on perfect alignment. The magnifying glass was their doorway into a world of precision, a universe where time itself was built from tiny, perfect parts. 6.3 The Child's Glass, a world made large. Perhaps you remember this. A summer afternoon, a patch of grass, a beetle moving slowly across the ground. A child holds a magnifying glass, crawling close to the earth, as if leading an expedition. Under the glass, the world becomes enormous, full of color, texture, movement. The magnifying glass turns curiosity into discovery, and the small into something wondrous. 6.4 The Detective's Glass, the art of seeing what others miss. Sherlock Holmes made it famous. The raised magnifying glass, the quiet pause, the careful search for clues. The glass became a symbol for truth-seeking, for patience, for the ability to notice what others overlook. It is the emblem of those who read the world detail by detail. 6.5 The Librarian Glass, a keeper of details. In old libraries, magnifying glasses rested beside thick volumes, not because the letters were too small, but because the details were too precious. Tiny initials, border marks, fine engravings, notes written in the margins by hands long gone. The magnifying glass was a companion for those who understood that history often hides in the smallest marks. Chapter 7 Linguistic Images. When we return from history to language, we notice how deeply the magnifying glass lives in our inner metaphors. It is not only an object, it is a way of speaking about attention, about clarity, about the quiet act of looking closely. 7.1 The image of the inner lens. When we say, look more closely, we rarely mean a physical lens. We mean an inner movement, a shift of attention, a gentle narrowing of focus. An inner lens is an image for what matters, what touches us, what we want to understand. It is a reminder that clarity begins inside. 7.2 The image of bringing something to light. To shed light on something is a common English phrase. It means to make something understandable, to reveal what was hidden, to let the truth become visible. A magnifying glass does exactly this. It gathers light and guides it toward what needs to be seen. 7.3 The image of examining. When we say, I need to examine this, we are not always talking about science. We mean, I need time. I need space. I need to understand what this means for me. Examining is not cold. It is careful. It is human. A magnifying glass becomes a symbol for this gentle, thoughtful attention. 7.4 The image of focus. To focus on something is to choose what matters. It means letting the important part come forward, letting the noise fall away, letting the small become clear. A magnifying glass teaches us that focus is not pressure, it is presence. The image of the hidden detail. English often speaks of the little detail that changes everything. A detail is small, but it can shift a whole story. A magnifying glass becomes the perfect metaphor for this kind of noticing. The quiet detail, the soft clue, the small truth that reveals the larger picture. 7.6 The image of an inner archive. We speak of keeping something in mind, of holding on to a thought, of bringing something back. These phrases show that we carry an inner archive, a collection of moments, memories, and meanings. A magnifying glass becomes an image for how we revisit this archive. Slowly, carefully, with respect for what we find. 7.7 The magnifying glass as a poetic image. Perhaps this is the deepest truth of this chapter. A magnifying glass is not only a tool, it is a way of seeing, a way of honoring the small, a way of understanding the hidden, a way of giving meaning to what we often overlook. It reminds us the world becomes clearer when we choose to look closely. Chapter 8 The Therapeutic Meaning. Therapeutically, the magnifying glass is a gentle inner image. It shows that what we look at is never random. It is chosen, felt, shaped by our story. Some things come clearer when we look closely. Some become softer. Some become lighter. Some simply ask to be seen. A magnifying glass reminds us that attention is an act of care, and that clarity often begins with a small, quiet moment of noticing. 8.1 The weight we see and how it changes us. Some memories feel heavy, not because they are large, but because they belong to the architecture of our life. A magnifying glass teaches us that even heavy memories need a place to rest, a place where they can lie quietly until we are ready to look again. Therapeutically, this means we may acknowledge the weight. We may honor that we carried it. We may recognize that we grew through it. A magnifying glass whispers, what feels heavy may become lighter when we see with gentle clarity. 8.2 What is not ours, and yet we look at it. Sometimes we examine things that were never truly ours. Expectations, roles that do not fit, words that shaped us without being true. A magnifying glass helps us discern what belongs to us from what we simply inherited. Therapeutically, this means we may look closely, we may question, we may choose what stays and what may be released. A magnifying glass becomes an image of inner order, a reminder that clarity is also a form of freedom. 8.3 Shared focus and the power of nearness. There are moments when we let someone look with us, when we share a detail, a memory, a truth. This is an act of closeness, a moment of connection. Therapeutically, this means we do not have to examine everything alone. We may share what feels heavy. We may show what has weighted. We may let someone stand beside us as we look. Shared focus becomes lighter. Shared memories become gentler. Shared stories become clearer. A magnifying glass reminds us, closeness begins where something small is shown. 8.5 Gentle details and what lifts us. There are also things we look at because they carry us. A sentence that strengthens, a moment that warms, a memory that steadies. These are gentle details, they support rather than burden. A magnifying glass becomes a symbol for these soft rooms inside us, places where the good is allowed to stay. 8.5 The magnifying glass as a compass for self-care. Therapeutically, the magnifying glass becomes a compass. It invites questions. What am I looking at? Why am I looking at it? Does it belong to me? Does it support me? Where may I ask for help? Where may I step back? These questions are not demands. They are invitations to listen inward. A magnifying glass reminds us, self-care begins when we choose consciously what we bring into focus. Chapter 9 Poems and Interpretations. Poetry slows an image until it becomes audible. It lets a word breathe in a different rhythm, one that reveals what prose often hides. The magnifying glass, small as it is, has long appeared in poems. diaries, and reflective writings as a symbol for attention, for clarity, for the quiet act of seeing what lies beneath the surface. The Naturalist's Lens, a poem of hidden words. In early nature poetry, the magnifying glass appears as a doorway into the unseen. Tiny hairs on a leaf, the shimmer of a wing, the delicate pattern of bark. These poems remind us that the world is full of quiet miracles, miracles that reveal themselves only when we bend closer. The magnifying glass becomes a symbol of wonder, of curiosity, of the gentle art of noticing. The romantic lens, a place for feeling. In romantic writing, the magnifying glass often appears as a metaphor for emotion, a detail that grows larger when the heart pays attention, a moment that expands when memory touches it, a feeling that becomes clearer when we dare to look. Here, the magnifying glass is not a scientific tool, it is a poetic one. It shows how the small can hold the great, how a single detail can carry an entire story. Interpretation: the magnifying glass as a mirror. Across these texts runs a thread. The details that shape us, the moments that stay, the truths that wait to be seen. The magnifying glass becomes a mirror, not of what we own, but of how we see. It shows us we are shaped by what we notice. We are softened by what we understand. We are deepened by what we allow to come into focus. Perhaps this is the quiet message of this chapter. A magnifying glass is not only a tool, it is a relationship to clarity, to meaning, to ourselves. Chapter 10, Meditation. Feel the quiet around you. Feel the breath moving in its own rhythm. Feel the gentle space opening inside you. Now imagine there is a magnifying glass within you, a small one, round, clear, shaped by time, shaped by your story, shaped by everything that has mattered. It rests in a still place, a place that feels familiar, even if you have never visited it with this much attention. You move closer to it, not with effort, but with presence. The magnifying glass waits. It does not call. It does not demand. It simply exists. You place your hand around it, slowly, with care. The surface feels calm, the texture shaped by years of holding what needed to be seen. You breathe in and out. A little deeper now. Your fingers find the edge of the lens. You lift it gently. Light gathers, a soft glow, a sense of clarity arriving in its own time. You bring the magnifying glass towards something inside you, a thought, a moment, a feeling, a memory that has waited for your gentle attention. You do not force anything, you simply look. The magnifying glass does not enlarge to overwhelm. It enlarges to reveal, to clarify, to soften, to help you understand. Perhaps something becomes clearer. Perhaps something becomes quieter. Perhaps something becomes kinder. You breathe again. A breath that feels a little fuller, a little steadier. You place what you saw back into its inner room, or you place the space itself back into stillness. Both are true. Both are complete. You lower the magnifying glass, slowly, with a movement that feels whole. It remains within you, a tool you can return to whenever you choose, a tool that reveals, a tool that steadies, a tool that reminds you that clarity begins with attention. And something in you remains with it, quite aligned, at ease. Chapter 11, Closing Message. Perhaps a thought from this episode will stay with you for a while. Perhaps an image, a detail, a quiet sense of what it means to look closely. The magnifying glass, small, steady, patient, may remind you that clarity does not need force, and that meaning often rests in the smallest places. It may remind you that attention is a gentle act, that understanding begins with a single moment of noticing, and that the world becomes larger when we allow ourselves to see its details. May this inner image accompany you through your day, not as pressure, but as presence. A reminder that you may choose what you bring into focus. A reminder that inner rooms can be tended. A reminder that clarity grows where attention rests. We will meet again when the next forgotten word finds you, quietly, steadily, in its own time. If you feel called to wander a little deeper, scripts, audio pieces, and small companion materials are available on my channels, including YouTube and Payhip. Perhaps one of them will walk a little further with you.